There is this notion of science, and my point of reference will be that. So I will just try to describe what is psychology in reference to science in general. So there is this idea of scientific investigation, scientific study, and I think psychology emerges once this concept is adopted, and then psychology is, I think, scientific study of the internal self of a human being. Those things which we cannot necessarily pinpoint to specific mechanical processes going on in the body, and when we can, it comes to the border of psychiatry. So there is a lot of abstract and concrete also in a human being, and the concrete stuff are those things that we can isolate and detect in terms of the function of the body through medical examination, and then the abstract, so from that point of reference, the abstract are those things which we cannot assign to specific processes in the body, and then those things are still very important. Our thoughts are there. We still don't know from medical perspective exactly what a thought is, what a feeling is. We know there's some physiology that happens in the body when we experience thoughts and feelings, but it doesn't mean it's that. We cannot define it that way. And then things like that then become study of psychology. So psychology is kind of the abstract study of the human being. If medicine is the concrete study, then psychology is the abstract study. Yeah, I think that is, for me, what is psychology.
There is a question there.
I just have a question for you. Based on that definition, do you think that as our knowledge of the human body improves and we gain a complete understanding of all of the functions within our physiology, and that psychology as a field will die out because everything is known? Do you think that's a possibility?
Let me tell you something, a kind of example to answer your question, which comes from mathematics, a subject that I know far better than psychology or medicine. There is something called Fermat's theorem, Fermat's problem. What is the official name of that thing?
Fermat theorem. Are you referring to this one?
The open problem. The thing that was open problem for a long time. Yeah. And so it's a very simple question about numbers. Very, very simple question, very concrete question. And for many, many years, people have been trying to solve that question, and number theory has grown and become a very big subject, and yet this question was remaining to be open. Along the way, abstract mathematics was developing for number theory as well as other things. And the problem was actually solved through the methods of abstract mathematics rather than concrete mathematics, and concrete solution to the problem still doesn't exist. So I think, if you're asking for my personal opinion, I think it's the other way around. I think at some point psychology will overtake medicine, and we'll have this very, very refined abstract theory of the human being, and then maybe at some point we will be able to understand everything very concretely as well. Or maybe we will realize that some kind of impossibility principle, that it's impossible to explain everything that we understand abstractly, concretely, and the other way around.
You have two statements and a question. The one statement is, I think a world in which we can concretely, deterministically determine what's going on in human lives is a very dark place. The other thing is, I think psychology is probably going to evolve the same way ultimately evolved into modern day chemistry. And then the other thing is, so many material processes depend on stochastic. There's an underlying stochastic process. And something that is a stochastic process determining what happens. Is that abstract or concrete?
Who am I to decide?
Open question.
So, apparently, psychology is a science.
for example.
But I'm going to put some fuel into the fire and say that it's a soft science as opposed to a hard science, if that's possible to differentiate between the two. So there's that tension between it's a science because we talk about it being a scientific study, and it is a scientific study. We have to do scientific research to prove theories and come up with hypotheses and so on and so on. It's not pie in the sky, it's not kind of thumb sucking. So there is definitely a scientific basis to psychology. However, it's abstract and it's soft in terms of the mind is a very abstract entity. And to understand the mind, we need to be abstract in our thinking and be softer in our science in terms of trying to understand the mind, if that makes sense. So it's a very, psychology, some people say it's not even a science, it's an art. But that's another ballgame. Why is psychology and arts and social sciences and not even the science faculty? It's one of those grey areas which is what psychology is about, I'm afraid. Psychology is a very grey area, and despite it being science, I think there's a lot of greyness, there's a lot of interpretation that plays its part, that makes it a softer science and makes it more abstract and concrete.